Okay, so some of you have been asking about my setup with the new RS4 Mini and the modded Kandao QooCam 3 Ultra system. The initial pictures that I shared had the QooCam 3 Ultra mounted using the stock plate of the RS4 Mini, and that did show quite a bit of the bottom plate and the arm connection on the right hand side, and that little knob there that you see to tighten the base plate. And I've played around with the gear that I have to move the camera forward as much as possible while still being able to maintain some sort of balance. And this is probably the best solution that I've been able to come up with without necessarily going to a larger vertical base plate modification to move the camera even further forward. Doing so does make the system incredibly front heavy as it is. The balancing itself is fairly straightforward, but you do need counterbalance or counterweights in the back of it to balance it. As you can see here in this footage, I have come up with a 95% solution to the issue of trying to use this camera on this gimbal. Again, I did not purchase this gimbal to use with this system, but I wanted to come up with a solution to be able to use it if I wished. So the solution that I came up with is essentially using the same parts and process that Hugh outlined on his video to mount the R5C system to this gimbal, which has worked perfectly fine for that camera. The parts that I'm using are exactly the same, so if you have any questions or if you're looking for links for these parts, they're the exact same parts that Hugh used in his system for the R5C. With the only exception is that I am attaching, as you can see there, some weights on the back to counterbalance the front load of the system. These are from smallrig, and let me double check. I believe they are 2 of their smallrig balance weights. One of them is 100 grams, and the other I'll verify, but I believe it's 75 or 50 grams. One stacked on top of the other. And the weight itself with these two, I was a little bit concerned at first because these weights from smallrig come in very specific sizes. There's 200, 100, and I believe 50 or 75. I'll have to confirm in a second what I ended up using. So I didn't really have much flexibility as far as what I can use to counterbalance, but fortunately enough, this worked out perfectly. It balances almost exactly by itself with the 2 weights behind the camera, as you see there. But one of the beautiful things from the parts that Hugh recommended on his video and that I'm using here is that back flap of the smallrig plate that you see there. That's normally for those NP batteries to attach. There's some mounting options there in the back where you can easily screw in these weights. And one of the most ingenious parts of this system is that because that back flap actually swivels up and down, it allows you to fine tune the balance of the back and the front further. As you can see in my system here, I have it slightly tilted up And that's allowing me to slightly offset the just minuscule amount of extra weight that I had on the back with these two weights. If you lift it up, it's millimeters at a time, slowly further up, closer to the body of the camera as you see it there. What that allows you to do is to offset that back weight by millimeters and fractions of a millimeter at a time, which is perfect because that allows you to fine tune that perfect balance between the front load and the back load even more, especially given that these weights come in very standard classifications. There's no fine tuning of the weights of adding 105 grams instead of 100. No, I'm sure you can find some third party or other types of weights that are a little bit more granular, but these are all that I had, and fortunately for me this seems to have worked out perfectly. Now I'll show some footage in a second. Unfortunately, even as far forward as I have the camera right now, which is quite frankly the most forward I would like to have it, and I'll show some close-up stills of the camera from the side so you can see just how far forward the lenses are. And technically at 180 degree view, they are technically in front of all the hardware of the gimbal, but these lenses I'm assuming are probably more than 180 degrees or maybe close to 190. Just like the R5C VR dual fisheye lens is actually 190 instead of 180. But what happens is that when you do your equirectangular conversion side by side, it actually trims some of the edges. So most of the lenses are gone. You can still see them when you do that equirectangular conversion. You'll see them in the middle, just a little bit of the left and right lens. But the portions of the gimbal that you can still see in the fisheye raw footage view, when you convert the footage to 180, I'm pleased to report are completely gone. They do get trimmed. Now this would only be an issue for you if you don't want to use the equirectangular version and you, for whatever reason, want to preserve the original aspect or the fisheye side by side full sensor view of the left and right eyes. If you do fisheye instead of equirectangular, then that would present a problem and you would have to further modify and try different parts to move that camera further forward and add more weight on the back and balance it. I'm personally not comfortable with adding that much weight to both the front and the back, even though this gimbal does have the payload capacity, I think of 2 kilograms or about 4 pounds. So there's definitely a lot of headspace and wiggle room to add more weight. I'm personally not comfortable, and for the export feature of 180 degrees once you convert it to equirectangular, I don't even see them anymore. I didn't do a test of the conversion from the raw fisheye to equirectangular with the original setup using the original plate of the RS4 Mini, because that one did, just from the preview I could see it showed a lot more. So I think even converting it to 180 degrees won't necessarily hide and mask absolutely everything. But this is probably my sweet spot of about 95% coverage. And if you are going to be exporting to a equirectangular format, then this gives you 100% masking and hiding of the gimbal in any way that you use it like this. Again, only if you convert it to equirectangular footage like I normally do. Even using Mystica Boutique, I do the equirectangular conversion down to 180 degrees. So this is probably how I'm going to end up using it 100% of the time when I do decide to use the gimbal, and if I decide to use the gimbal with this camera system. I love the dual grip options of the gimbal with my left and right hand, and I can use that arm there to be able to tilt it down and almost hold it almost at ground level quite easily, and I can switch and back and forth between my right hand and left hand, or use both hands. It weighs practically nothing compared to all the other gimbal solutions and cameras that I've used, so it's a very lightweight Very easy to hold and do extended amount of shooting time with it, with this little weight on it. Again, just wanted to share with you guys what I've been able to kind of MacGyver to get this system to cooperate with the RS4 Mini. And again, it's got that AI subject tracking there that you can enable. And again, you can use this VR system as a camera operator if you're going to be doing some dynamic shots of you kind of walking around the camera. Again, in VR, you typically don't want motion in the camera. It causes motion sickness, but you can make the panning and the movement of the gimbal extremely slow and smooth so that if there is going to be movement, it's tracking your subject, so the focus of your eyes will remain with the subject while the background slightly moves as you're turning and walking around the camera. I don't personally recommend it, but it is available and it's a cool feature, and it could be something experimental that somebody can play around with, and maybe they can come up with a creative use that won't necessarily cause too much motion sickness. I will plan to experiment with that forward, but again, this is primarily to be used as a gimbal to stabilize my VR system. And again, primarily this is meant for my R5C, just like Hugh outlined in this video. I just wanted to show and share what I've been able to do to accommodate it to use the QooCam 3 Ultra mod system. And again, I'll hop over to the computer so I can just quickly show you the raw fisheye footage and the equirectangular conversion. I'll also include some of the links to the items that I used. Again, they're exactly the same things that Hugh used on his video, so reference his video for more information on them. But I'll also dig up links to these smallrig counterbalance weights. I think they came with a smallrig base gimbal base plate that included the counterweights with it. I'll have to double check. It's been years since I purchased these. I just had to dig them up from storage. So I'll look for those links and include them there for you guys if you're interested in kind of replicating something like this, or if you're already planning on getting the RS4 Mini and you have the QooCam 3 Ultra mod, or you're planning on getting them both now. I'm sure there's other gimbals that might work out of the box better with this type of VR system that won't require this kind of tinkering with different base plates to make it work and hide. But again, this is just what I have, and I wanted to share it with you guys if any of you are interested. So again, here I just want to highlight from a side profile view just how far forward the lenses technically are from any portion of the gimbal there. As you can see, the lenses are about as forward as they can be. Technically, if you look at the base of the lens portion there, it's technically in front of everything of the every part of the gimbal. So if the lenses were truly an exact 180 degree field of view, there would not be anything visible at all in the raw fisheye footage. Again, that's not technically correct, because when you look at the fisheye footage, you'll be able to see some of the plate on the bottom and then that knob on the right hand side. So that's why I'm assuming these lenses are slightly above 180, maybe 190, similar to the field of view of the Canon R5C dual fisheye lens. But again, just wanted to show that. And let me pull it on the other side so you can see from the reverse portion here in a second. So that's the base plate there at the bottom, and then here on the right hand side, that knob right here, that's slightly visible as well in the fisheye raw footage. So again, only if you're using fisheye as your export method will it still be visible. Again, you'll have to come up with a different solution, different base plates and counterweights to pull that camera even further forward. I personally don't think it's worth it, especially for this type of camera, which is kind of a point and shoot, take with you. Most likely you're going to be rendering it in equirectangular format. So in that case, this is not an issue at all. This doesn't matter. It won't even show up when you do it that way. But again, I do want to highlight that and point that out for any of you who this might be important to. So just be aware of that. Okay, so let's see. This is really the star of the show here. I will attempt to demonstrate the camera here. So again, super straightforward. The exact same parts that Hugh is using in the R5C video that he just released. Again, this is the stock RS4 Mini base plate there on the bottom. This is that NP mount adapter base plate that he is using to shift the R5C camera slightly further away from the gimbal so that it fits without a cage. So that's that same part. And then the QooCam 3 Ultra camera just has that plate attached to it on the bottom. So you just slide that right in. And this is that shift, that side shift that the R5C is utilizing to be able to fit with this gimbal. You don't need to necessarily shift it to any direction. You can just keep it centered. For our purposes, we're just using it to move the camera slightly more forward in this case, so you can see that. And then this is really where the magic happens. Here in the back, we've got these 1/4 inch mounting holes available, and that's where I am utilizing the smallrig weights to balance the back of the camera. So let me just verify here. So again, this is a 100-gram weight, and there's yep, it was a 50-gram weight on top of it. So that's what I'm using. The two weights combined for 150 grams, and that is just about exactly what you need with this setup to balance the camera perfectly from the front and back. It almost came out exactly right on the spot, and I just mount that to the center one here. And again, this is part of that beauty that I was mentioning with this pivoting back tail portion, is that you can fine-tune the balance when you're balancing the gimbal by slightly moving it further forward or back. So that incremental, those few degrees of change up and down completely can shift the center balance of the camera from the front load to the back load, which allows you to fine-tune that very rigid and hard 150 grams of weight that you put to the back, that you can't, you know, add 5 at a time or 1 at a time to fine-tune it exactly. This is the beauty that really kind of sold the ability to balance that perfectly, is the ability to be able to move it up and down just enough to get that perfect balance when you're on the gimbal. So again, I don't know if Hugh realized what he was doing as far as the implications to the QooCam 3 Ultra mod and balancing on this gimbal. I don't know if he was seeing that far ahead, but again, that definitely worked out to the advantage of being able to balance this. So again, big shout out to Hugh and all of the recommendations and kind of work that he does for the community, and getting us all the latest and greatest news and recommendations. Again, this just happened to work out perfectly for the needs. And as you can see here, I'll turn on the gimbal, and you can see it there balancing out. So again, the fine tuning that you can do with the counterweight there is depending. If you go with this exact same system, you'll have to fine tune that angle just enough to get you that perfect balance. But other than that, it's pretty much ready to go, and that's what I used on the test footage. Again, I'll include some sample footage there for you guys to check out. Okay, so here I have the QooCam software to process the footage from the camera. This is the equi-rectangular formatted footage that you can see here. There's nothing visible on the bottom. It's completely clean, nothing on the right-hand side. So if you're converting your footage from fisheye to equirectangular side-by-side format like this, then with this current setup, you're perfectly in the clear. You don't have to worry about anything showing up. I think I even had the tripod feet of the gimbal in the open position when I was recording this footage that I didn't notice until I was looking at the raw footage. I may be wrong, but I think I had one of the legs open without realizing it. And again, you can't see any of that. Most importantly, when you're recording like this, you're most likely gonna have your gimbal slightly tilted forward, so that'll protrude the camera even further ahead from your hands below, or even if you have the tripod legs open on accident and you don't realize it. I think most of the time people are gonna be holding the gimbal kind of tilting forward a little bit away from your body to maximize the view, the FOV forward, not showing any of your hands, gimbal, or even your feet if you're holding it perfectly vertical right in front of you. You can see your feet on the bottom sometimes. So also another advantage with using this gimbal is that little extra handle. You can hold it with that hand almost tilted completely down and the camera being as far forward as possible, kind of like what the old skateboarding videos would show with the people holding the camera from the top as they're holding it below them to get those really low angle shots. I started kind of tilting it down closer to the ground so you can see that transition from going from eye level down to almost ground level here. Again, I apologize, the playback might be a little bit choppy. I don't have the latest and greatest computer setup. I don't have the best graphics card, so the playback is a little bit choppy, but at least it's smooth enough to be able to kind of highlight there the difference. Again, everything looks perfectly fine to me. I don't see anything peeking through the bottom. I will show you a snapshot of the raw fisheye footage here. As you can see there in the bottom right-hand portion of the fisheye, you can see a bit of that black plate sticking out of the bottom there. When I first was reviewing the raw footage, I was a little bit concerned because from looking at the camera just on the gimbal, it doesn't look like it'll see anything, especially if it's a true 180-degree field of view. It's as far forward as possible. Looking at the raw fisheye footage, I kind of panicked a little bit, thinking that this was not going to work. And again, you can see the base plate there, the tip of the plate there, and then that knob on the right-hand side of that. But again, happy to report that when you convert it to equirectangular, it all goes away. Again, this is my suspicion that this lens is just actually a little bit more than 180 degrees. It's probably closer to 190. So again, if you're going to be processing and rendering out raw footage back into fisheye view, then this may not work for you and you'll have to come up with another solution. But if you're going to be like me and probably most people converting this to equirectangular, as you see here, then you'll probably be fine. Again, if you get the exact same parts and you set it up the way that I did, then you'll avoid having to see anything on the bottom, and you can use this gimbal. Again, I'm sure there's other gimbals that may provide an equal or greater solution with less fiddling around, but I personally don't own another gimbal for a VR system. This is the first one that I decided to hop on for my R5C camera, and I wanted to find a solution for it to work in the case that I wanted to use it with the QooCam 3 system. For any of you that are interested in kind of replicating this, and if the QooCam 3 mod is your primary camera and you're looking for a gimbal, the price point of this gimbal is really competitive. It's got a lot of bells and whistles, and it will allow you to eventually use it with heavier camera systems or upgrade. If you ever decide to get the R5C system, then you know that this gimbal will also support it and be compatible with it. And again, part of the beauty of that is that the same exact hardware that I'm using for the R5C system is what you would use for the QooCam 3. So let's say you purchase the QooCam 3 mod and this gimbal and the hardware to modify it so that you can record like this, and then you plan further down the road of eventually getting the R5C camera. then you at least have the confidence of knowing that the hardware that you're using for this system now is exactly what you'll need for the R5C system. Again, I don't know if Hugh was planning this far ahead, or this type of compatibility between the two systems. I doubt it, but again, all credit to Hugh and his recommendations as always for all the best gear to use for these various different VR systems that we all follow him for. Again, I'll have all the links to the parts. Also, make sure that you watch Hugh's video if you haven't done so already, so you can get even more familiar with the setup, the parts. There's links in his videos. I'll put links in my videos. I don't have any affiliate links on my videos, so you don't have to worry about that. But again, I'll have that all included, and I'll also try to dig up that smallrig base plate with those weights that I purchased I don't know how many years ago now that I'm currently using, if you want to replicate this.